Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't you do it. Hey guys, this is actually going to be a really short intro. Just adding this in real quick since I had to split up the procedural mesh tool into multiple parts. So this will be part 2. I'm going to jump right into it. And this is going to have a lot to do with some additional randomization effects and some other cool stuff. So let's jump into Unreal. All right, so I'm going to actually we're going to keep that at that variance for now. I'm going to come in here and there's the same level of control. Well, actually, I'll demonstrate that to you. So let me actually add a third mesh structure. And in this third mesh, I'm actually going to add something here with a grate. It's a different, let's add that in. All right. Now we have another panel type in here, and you'll notice there is a spot here with some dirt underneath. I'm actually going to add a submesh element to this. I'm going to do a submesh element of 1 to this mesh, and you'll notice I'll come down here to submeshes. I'll add a new submesh 1, and I'm going to put the grate, this is for floor segment 1 grate 1. So my floor segment 1 grate 1 is right here, that submesh. So this is actually going to add the grate to that mesh. And you'll notice again, because my alignment, I have everything kind of perfectly aligned here. So that mesh is in place on all of these. And I know it looks ridiculous because nobody ever has this many grates in a row. Maybe, I don't know, some do. Okay, so here is where, and a good example of where we're going to do some XY trans variance here. So I'm going to, again, go down to my submesh 1, the grate. And again, I'm not going to do any permanent transforms. I'm going to do some variance. Z I'm not going to mess with because, Z I'm not going to mess with. I'm actually going to raise these up a little bit, these panels. So real quick, I'm going to go to the main mesh. I'm going to do transform, location. Let's do, well, actually, I'm going to do a variance. I'm going to do Z axis. It's minimum 0.1, max 2, no, max 4. So you'll notice there's a little bit of a rise on all of those. And you'll notice that the submesh goes with it, right? So the submesh already accounts for any transform variances within the main mesh, which as it should. All right, so coming down to, again, the submesh structure for the grate, I'm going to do some variance on that. So the left-right translation variance, I'm going to say, let's do -10 to 10. And so what you're going to see is now, actually, let's do something more extreme, -30 to 30. So it means left to right, you'll start, if I rise up and get a global view, you'll notice the grates are now in a variance of places, right? So now we get maybe some random grates positionings. Whenever this spawns, there's going to be kind of the grate positioning is going to be kind of randomized, right? So the X, I'm actually going to do a little bit on the Y too, -30 to 30. So now we got some back and forth. Now it's kind of within a 30 unit basically circle around that main mesh. We have basic spawnability here. But again, this is going to lead to the next factor. They're all facing the same way rotational wise, so it does look a little bit weird, right? So let's go down to here. You're going to see random rotation. There's a bunch of rotation controls as well. So here I'm actually going to say this will be a simple implementation. We're going to do rotation min and max. On X, I'm actually going to do let's do -45 to 45. Where's the random? Click on random rotation. There we go. And you notice it's regenerating because I have regeneration on. And I'm actually on the wrong axis. X is not the right axis. Sorry. I keep messing around with the stats here. This is obviously the Z index, or the Z rotation, right? So let's do -25 to 25. All right, cool. Now we're in business. All right. So now you have random rotations on all of the grates. If I look at it from above, you'll see there's a good smattering of random rotations here. So not only is there a transform variance, there's a rotational variance within those transforms as well. So excellent. Now there's still way too many glow rods, and there's way too many grates in the meat regardless, right? So I'm actually going to come up to the main meshes. We're not dealing with some meshes, we're actually doing the dealing with the main meshes now. So for main mesh 2, you'll notice there is 2 parameters here called mesh pull weight and chance to add. So the mesh pull weight is essentially the weight up against all of the other meshes in the pool. Right now there's 3 meshes in this pool, and the chance to add is actually a 0 to 1 chance to add. So a 0.5 would be there's a 50-50 chance that it's even added in the first place or not. So a good use of that would be, in this circumstance, would be not on the main mesh, but let's go back again to the sub meshes, sub mesh 1, and I'm going to do chance to add 0.3 on the grate. So what that's going to do is, because this is a loose grate, it's only 0.3, or the grate is not even going to show up 70% of the time. So 30% of the time it shows up, and that's probably what you see here. So 30% of these grates are in place, while 70% of them are not even showing up. So that's chance to add. That's an example of chance to add in the first place. So now I'm going to come back up here to the main meshes. I'm going to come to that same floor grate mesh, and I'm going to close these down a little bit. So we don't want to change the chance to add, because if we change that to 0.5, right, we start getting gaps, because this has been selected, but the chance to add it has actually only a 50% chance. So now we start getting gaps, and there is circumstances where you'd want that, but this is not one of those. So I'm going to actually put chance to add back up, and this is where the mesh to pool weight comes in. So right now everything is even, so this has just as much chance as every other thing chance, but we only want a few grates in our floor, so to speak. So I'm actually going to put this down to 0.1, or even 0.2, just a little bit of emphasis here. So now we have that's at 0.2. So we're going to do the same thing with I'm going to do the same thing with the mesh 1, which are the glow rods. I'm going to put that down to a 0.3, 0.2. Let's do that. There we go. All right. So now you'll see that the dominant panel is the 1x1 that we added in the beginning. You'll notice there's some height gaps here as well still. All right, cool. So now we're starting to get something a little bit cleaner, but I'm actually going to, once again, add another mesh. And here I'm going to add in, let's do a really, really long one so we can start. I can show you one of the last rotational features. Let's do some wires. How about some wires? Here you go. Let's do, what's this one? No, that's the panel. That's not wires. All right, this is the wires. Let's do this one. Okay, so now we have a 1x3, some wires, panel floor wires coming through. I'm actually going to, again, reduce the weight on that. I'm going to put that down to a 0.1, a 0.2. So that starts working in, and this can go up too. So if I'm happy with the ratios of everything else, I could just increase the ratio of the actual 1x1 panel. So I can move that up to a 2, a 5, 10, right? So it's not just a 0 to 1 scale. So you can scale up the opposite way too if you need to, if everything else is in balance. Excuse me. But I'm going to maybe I'll jump that to a 4. That's probably what I'm looking for here. Some random, no. Okay, here we go. Really what I need to do is drop this one down, 0.1. There you go. All right, so we're working with the wires, so I'll keep them here for a little bit. All right, so I'm really quickly going to add another submesh down here, and add the glass for that. I think it's this one. Oh, I didn't set the submesh. I gotta add the submesh index of 1, 2, 3, which is index 2, right? All right, cool. All right, so that pops in. And again, the goal of this mesh, because it could be the grate that I add physics to, right? So if you shoot the grate, it could have physics where I can knock the grate even further out. It's just the initial position, or these glass pieces, they can break. So there's different positionings I'd want for that, but it still needs to be a separate mesh control. So right now we have, all right, so we have what, 4 meshes in play here in this floor structure. The wires are actually something that's lower in my lower in the tier here. So I'm actually gonna do a transform. I'm gonna do a permanent transform of -2, negative 10, -5. There you go. All right. So now we got a little bit of we got some good variance here. All right. So now, again, things are still looking very, even with the 1x1 panels. You notice there's some scratch textures on here, but they're all facing the same way, right? Everything's facing the same way. All the grates are facing down this direction. All the grate panels, I should say. So there are, just wanted to quickly introduce you guys to the random rotation capabilities here. So let's do the 1x1 floor segment. There you go. So we do want random rotation on that. So let's turn that on. So now there are no parameters to set that. So everything is still, as you can see, they're still the same. You can look at all the patterns, right? Scratches are all in the same place here. All right. So if we turn on the random rotation, we're going to do random rotation around Z, because we're not doing any of this stuff. A random rotation, the min is 0 and the max is what, 360 degrees. Boom, done, right? So you're like, okay, well, that's technically working, right? So all the 1x1 panels they now have a random rotation between 0 and 360 degrees, which is incredibly useful for plants, trees, and stuff. But since we're working with engineering and structural things that need to fit together, there's additional requirements needed here. So you'll see there's rotational lock. So on any axis, you can actually have a rotational lock. So that random rotation could be anywhere in that range, but it's locked to certain parameters in there. So for instance, with a square panel that's perfectly square, it can't be 45-degree angles, but any 90-degree angle, you can lock it to any 90-degree angle around the z-axis, which is what we're looking for here. Pop that in, boom. So now it's locked to, the random rotation is actually locked to 90-degree increments within that, for that mesh. So if you come down here, and look at it now, you'll notice the scratch patterns are, randomized 90 degrees. They're either facing one of 4 directions, essentially. This, northeast, southwest, so to speak. Northeast, southwest, northeast. All right, so that can apply to any mesh for randomization, but you get into a problem for, let's say the 1x3s, right? So you can't do 90-degree angles, right? So we're gonna let's go to that mesh structure, which is the 4th one, or I should say the 3rd one in the array. I'm gonna come down here and turn on random rotation for that. And I'm gonna again go to the rotation min max for that, and I'm gonna say 0 to 360 degrees, right? So same issue, right? You got the random rotations heading all around, everything looks terrible, right? Okay, so what we can do here is now, instead of 90 degrees, because it's symmetrical on basically only 2 now, it's either 0 or 360 degrees, or 180 degrees. So instead of 90 degrees, because it's symmetrical 4 ways, this is only symmetrical in 2 ways, right? So we do a rotational lock of 180 degrees around the axis, right? So now any longer panels would lock in So now you have a random rotation. Let's see if this is two different ones. Yep. So we got the scratches here. We don't have the scratches here. It's a different scratch pattern. So these two are facing 180 degrees different from each other because they're locked. So that's a way you can start achieving these kind of results, these randomization results, and have really, really flexible controls over each of these. Again, you don't have to use the rotational locks. Like for instance, when we did with I showed you with the grates, they don't need to be rotationally locked to make it look more natural. But certain things, when you're trying to fit it together, like these wall pieces, you do need that kind of structural control. So the rotational lock is there for your use. One other, I'm actually going to add in a really quick, I'm going to add one more panel type in here just to give an example of another random rotation and how it could be used. This is actually a wall panel I have, so I'm going to put it on the floor, so it's going to be a little bit weird, but just to give you guys an idea. So I'm going to add a fifth base mesh structure here. All right, and after this gets added, I'm actually going to open this up and go to procedural walls segments. And I'm going to pick one specifically I made for this type of thing. It's another wire. It's a 1x1 wire panel. I'm going to add that in. All right, cool. So now we have these wall panels. Again, this is meant for a wall, but I'm just throwing them here to illustrate my one of my rotational points here. So I'm actually going to add submesh index here of, what are we on? 4, 3, 3. We're on 3. Yep. Okay. So I added a submesh index of 3 on this. I'm going to go down to my submesh index, add that. I'm going to come back in here, and there is a panel, door panel, right here, wires door. So that door I'm actually going to add to this. And you will see that this is a good example of, oh, it didn't just pop into place. So what I added on a submesh right here was this a door, this piece of door here. It's a metal door on a hinge. It's supposed to be on a hinge, but it isn't aligned up. But you can kind of see it in hiding in there. So this is a good example of something not being lined up, right? But we do have, again, we have controls to handle that. So in here, I'm going to go to transform, and on Z, I'm going to bring it up 20, right? All right, negative 20. That looks a little bit better. Let's go to negative 20. So this is something that wasn't lined up at all, right? And we are doing this line. So I'm actually going to bring it down. It's not, the offset's not 10 on the Z. We got to actually go back down to 10. Nope, it's a little bit too much. Let's go to 13. All right, so now we have, let me find another one, because I have regenerating on, so it is kind of regenerating here. All right, so we're close. Let's go to negative 22. I should have turned that off while it's generating. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna go with this now. That's the placement I want. So now all the doors are looking good and closed. So now I'm gonna come here and I'm actually gonna add again. Let's do a chance to add a 0.9. So 90% of them have doors. Some of them are missing, like that one over there. That's good. But I'm actually gonna add rotation, random rotation, right? And I'm not gonna add a lock on it because this is something that's going to be very, it's a small range. I'm going to come down to rotation min max, and on Z, it's not Z this time, I think it's Y. I'm going to do 0 to 40. Nope, 40. Nope, 40. Nope, I failed miserably again. That is not the Y axis. 0 to 40. Oh, and I have it the wrong way. So it's negative 40. There you go. All right. Okay. So now these are in place. So now these submeshes, you'll see that the door is, and you notice all the doors have a random rotation now of anywhere from 0 degrees of the 90% that were rendered. So there's still 10% that don't even have doors, but of that 90%, 10%, or sorry, of that 90%, the open range, the rotational range is anywhere from 0 to negative 40 degrees, giving it the appearance of, random openings on these doors. Like this one's almost closed, for instance. So now I'm actually going to take this a step further, and I'm going to take the whole thing, I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees around the axis, and I'm going to treat it like a ceiling. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to bring this up here, right? So now we got a ceiling for our place, for our operational facility. All right. So, and this is still a little bit busy, but just forgive that for now. So I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to close. So we're going to get into, we have a generated layer 1. So now I'm going to add a new generated layer, right? So this everything in 1 is just the actual, the ceiling essentially now that we've built, right? The structure for that. So I'm going to add a new mesh structure for the second layer. And for this mesh structure, I'm going to come in and add, here it is. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to add a rafter segment to this mesh, or this new layer. All right, so I'm going to come over here. So this is the same exact, because we're adding another layer on top of it of kind of these rafters over the ceiling. I'm actually going to make it the same. I think it was 2000, right? 2000 by 3000. And we're going to give it the same 178 space. And boom, we have rafters, untextured rafters. Let me actually add a really quick, let me add the texture back into that rafter. I'm not sure what happened to it. Rafter. There we go. Save it, close it. All right, cool. So now we have textured rafters. All right, so right now we have what's showing up is there's a single mesh, right, showing up on every single row essentially. So what we're gonna have to do is right away we're gonna drop it down. So this is a global change, so to speak. So I'm gonna open this up and do a transform of come down let's do 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. There you go. All right. And we'll pretend the rafters are attached to the wall. All right, cool. So now we got rafters, right? We got rafters, and this whole thing, the advantage of this whole thing can be moved, right? This whole thing can be moved into place wherever you want. So let's say there's a couple more changes we want to make. I'm going to add another layer here, and this is actually just going to be, I'm just going to illustrate a point here. We're going to open this up, mesh structure. We're actually going to add in a rafter segment again on this mesh structure, and I'll show you guys why in a second. Right, so now they're kind of overlapping. So let's come here and let's do again 2000 by 3000 space 178. Okay, so now we have two mesh structures. I just wanted to add this really quick. So now we have two rafter structures, one smaller than the other. So I just wanted to give you an idea that this is in this instance I'd probably be wanting to offset the first structure. So if we can do location 100, yeah, okay, that's good. And this can get better, obviously. But if we look down here, now we see that we have a very kind of gross looking, but the point will stand that we have this procedurally generated rafter system of different kind of rafters hanging in here. So one more thing I want to show you quick, coming in here, I'm actually going to add one more generated layer. I'm going to come down here and let's add a mesh structure, and I'm actually going to add a light. Come in here, and I have a bunch of lights that we made. While we're actually working on adding support for blueprints instead of static meshes. There's going to be you can add a blueprint or even a destructible for chaos physics as well. It's going to be pretty cool. There's still a couple bugs we're working on that, so I'm actually just going to add a static mesh here for a light. And you'll see again we have a bunch of lights. Well, let me do the positioning. Let me stretch this out to, again, 2000, what is it, 3000. Okay, now we have light fixtures coming. Oh, hold on, there we go. We have light fixtures, which are totally messed up and upside down. But again, we can handle this, right? So let's come in here in this mesh structure. I'm going to do a transform. I'm going to do a rotation of 180 degrees. Boom. And I'm actually going to translate down 100. I'm actually going to translate down even more. Let's do 150, so it makes it look like it's on the bottom of the rafter. I'm actually going to scale these down too. Let's go to 0.6. 0.6, 0.6. Perfect. All right, and I'm actually going to bring this up now. 140, 145. Perfect. Let's pretend that's attached. Okay. All right. So now we have lighting. I have lighting attached to the bottom of these rafters. Now, that's very expensive bulb array. So I'm actually going to limit these. There's some controls around how we can generate these. So I'm actually going to introduce you to the last piece we have here. I'm going to close this up. And we're going to add alternating skip factor. All right. So now these alternating skip factor, you come in here, you'll see that it skips every other, well, I got to put the actual factor in, right? So okay, so now we're going to say 2. We're going to skip every 2 places, right? So now you can see we're coming up with some additional patterns here. So if I take out alternate skip factor, you'll see they're all in line, right? So these lights only show in the second, they're skipped 2 places. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So now those are kind of an even light array you can see here. And then if I do alternating, there's an alternating option. Then you can kind of get those fancier patterns, and you can offset that as much as you want, right? So these now we're alternating the offsets. So let's actually do 4, right? And this is a min max. This is a start position and to skip, right? So it doesn't have to be even. So right now it's skipping every 4, and you'll notice the pattern has changed as well. So a ton of options and customizations for kind of this kind of control over patterns and arrays within a structured, industrial environment type thing. All right, so we're gonna cut that episode right there. This was an extra long one, but there was a good chunk that I wanted to kind of put together in terms of showing all the randomizations and the different layering. So we're gonna cut that episode right there. I apologize. I think this is gonna be like a 25-minute episode. So I think there's one more episode after this that'll be a lot shorter, but this has to do with actually popping holes into walls for corridors and doors, right? So let's cut it off there, and I hope you guys check out episode 9 to finish up this tool. Thanks, guys.